Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of On Air with Owen. And today I am joined by Anthony Parker, who is the GM of EMEA for MindTickle and also a performance coach at Replayz.com. Anthony, thank you for joining us today. Really good to have you here. How's things?
Yeah, very well, Owen. Good to see you as always. Always good to have a catch up with you, my friend. And yeah, things are going well. It's Friday, good day ahead of us, and then looking forward to a few hopefully drinks in the outside garden at a nearby pub.
Oh, what a treat! What a treat! Absolutely love it. Well, look, we'll see if we can get through a productive conversation, and then let you crack on and get in the beer garden as early as you can. It's been a while. Well, we're talking about a topic today that's actually close to my heart and yours in terms of the level of importance it plays. And the topic we're talking about today is why sales reps should take ownership for their own development and their own training and their own career progression. Because I think there's a lot of conversation around organizations investing in people, but actually we're talking about why it should be driven by the reps themselves as well, not instead, as well. I think that's important to say. Yeah. Before we get into the topic though, can you give us literally 2 minutes? Who's Anthony? Who are MindTickle? Who's Replayz.com? Just give it a really quick overview.
Absolutely, I'll give you. MindTickle is all about micro content and people's attention span. So I'll deliver that in less than a minute, Owen. So so Anthony Parker, as you mentioned, I'm GM at MindTickle. MindTickle is a sales readiness company, sales readiness platform that helps salespeople be better at their job and more effective, with less time in the classroom being bored and much less time clicking through LMS content, hoping that either that finishes or their life does. So really for us, we're helping salespeople get better at their job, spend less time being bored and wasting their time, and helping managers, coach and sales enablement leaders get insights into the outcomes of their programs. The other thing that you mentioned, which is linked to this conversation, which is why I'm keen to bring it up, in my spare time, because I really enjoy coaching and dealing with fast-growing organizations and account executives who are really coachable, I work for Replayz.com as a performance coach, and I think there's some synergy between MindTickle, Replayz, and the conversation today.
Love it, brilliant. I think you nailed it in under a minute. Well done.
There we go.
Fantastic. Well, look, let's get on with the topic. I'm going to start really broad. So when we're looking at SDRs, AEs, anybody who's working in a sales organization, we're talking about, and we're trying to send the message that they should take ownership for their own development.
Yeah.
Why do we say that? Let's start there. What's your take on that? Why are we encouraging that mindset?
Yeah, and I think actually in your introduction, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's why should they do it as well as the company? So this is not getting sales enablement and the company off the hook, because they have to do that. But if that's all a salesperson does, they are not going to be effective, because you have to take responsibility for your development. You have to be doing things outside of what sales enablement are giving you and the company is giving you, because if you don't, your colleagues will, and or the best colleagues will, and you can guarantee some of the best people at your competitors will. So if you don't do it, you're going to be behind the curve internally, externally. And when you get interviewed by someone like me, you're going to get exposed very quickly if you're somebody who is not proactive and not somebody who is driven to improve themselves, rather than just sitting there and being very passive about their self-improvement.
Interesting. And I'm going to ask some really basic questions, because I'm thinking there'll be people watching this who immediately jump in and totally agree with us. And there'll be others that are thinking, hang on a second. This is, like you said it before, isn't it a company responsibility? Yeah. When we're talking about above and beyond, we are pushing this beyond just consuming content at work. We're talking about making it a personal choice outside of work as well, aren't we?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if people are in sales, and I say this a lot, is that sales has the lowest barrier to entry of any high paying profession in the world. And in fact, even if you include sporting that, there are people that are doing sales that have fallen into sales. Some of them are really good. Some of them should not be in sales, but they've fallen into it. And it is the lowest barrier to entry profession in the world. There's no real qualifications that you can get that then someone can say, I want qualifications from this university in sales, in discovery skills. You can talk your way into a job and work your way up very quickly. So because of that, from my perspective, it's about what an individual has to take responsibility for that, because if they don't, what will happen is, from my perspective, I was just trying to think of an example that I gave recently, and tweaking that slightly. As a salesperson, if you're coming in and you're only consuming, as you said earlier, the content that your company is providing, what will happen is that you will plateau. Because it's a low barrier to entry in sales, when you're then looking at other jobs, when you're looking at basically getting hired, promoted, etc., if you are not naturally a person who's going to be improving themselves, it will come across, because the answers you give will show potentially a lack of grit, a lack of creativity, a lack of curiosity, because grit, creativity and curiosity comes from the desire to actually improve yourself. So reading books, listening to podcasts, going on LinkedIn, there is so much more information now, YouTube, LinkedIn, than there's ever been. You can probably spend 30 to 45 minutes a day, assuming you're looking at the right content, and be better at the end of the month than somebody who's been doing this for multiple years, who's just doing the same thing every day. So for me, I'm really looking for that individual, as an individual who is always about improving those incremental gains. Seeing that in the sales arena is really effective. I think from your perspective, when you're obviously hiring and you're hiring on the regular basis, how much does that play into you? How do you test for that? That's an interesting one. How do you test for somebody's ability to self-improve versus being passive?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think sometimes it's about getting out of interview mode, isn't it? So I find that the moment you are asking questions, waiting for answers, you get the prepared. When you flip things and you pattern interrupt, just like you would in sales, but in an interview, you get a person coming out. And I find sometimes that can be done right at the beginning of an interview by not diving straight into the interview, but having what's perceived to be a very social, small talk conversation, but getting it beyond that and getting it into sales, Absolutely. Which is their passion, and not making it a sit down first. Maybe we're still standing, maybe we've not actually opened our books yet, and there's some physical things that we can do to get that conversation becoming natural. Absolutely. And break the barriers down. So I definitely think you can do it, but you have to create an environment where that's comfortable.
I agree with you, definitely. And I think when I was interviewing, there's a two-way street. In my opinion, I need to make sure that I'm signposting right the way through the process, what the interview is going to be like, what the outcomes are, what the steps are. So I will do that. But when I'm interviewing AEs, I don't give them or the recruiters, if it comes to a recruiter, much of a brief about what is happening, because I want them to take control.
Yeah.
So if they send me an email the day before telling me what the agenda is, what they're looking to get out of it, all of this, then I'll let them do. We'll go ahead and do that. If they come on the call and are passive, the interview will happen to them rather than them controlling that, just like a discovery call.
Yeah.
And that to me is a sign of somebody's proficiency in the art of sales and controlling meetings in the positive sense of controlling meetings, controlling it so it uses the least amount of time to deliver the maximum amount of value. People think controlling meetings is, you're control. The person that you're speaking to doesn't want 45 minutes of rambling going all over the place and then to be offered your entire sales deck at the end of it as a next step. They want to know what is going to happen. Why are they there? What are they going to get out of it? And all of these things tie back into self-improvement, because a lot of this doesn't necessarily come from the organization, because there's an assumption at a lot of organizations that I've hired this person, they've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever years of experience, they've got the basics. And I can tell you 80% of people at least do not have the basics or do not regularly apply the basics, because that's why there's so many poor calls going on.
Yeah.
And so many people are not improving because they're not treating it like a craft.
Yeah, interesting. Can I ask you a question? This would be an interesting one. Can an organization say to an employee, you should be doing these things outside of work, in your opinion?
Can they? Yes.
Should they?
outside of work, I think is a bit more difficult. Now, to me, if somebody's performing and they're using their work time, and let's be honest, not everyone is going to treat it like. To me, this is a passion for me. It's almost a hobby as well as a job. Not some elements. Let's be honest. I'm not looking forward to some of the things you have to do in the management role. Of course. But you do them because you have to. But the sales as a craft, and waking up and having all of these exciting, annoying, frustrating, interesting conversations and things that are really different every day, I love. So to me, walking the dog and listening to a podcast is actually what I do for fun, as sad as it may sound to some people. So I can't expect every single person that works for me or that I come across or I coach to do exactly the same as that. However, if they don't do that, they're going to be beaten by someone who is. So to answer your question directly, I think you can encourage it and you can talk about the benefits of doing so. You can't mandate it. No. But if you see the benefits of somebody who does it versus someone who doesn't, and there are people who would be listening to this, and I would imagine any salespeople listening to this would be more likely to be the ones doing this. Yeah. Their colleagues who watching this. Yeah. Exactly. Just the fact that they've got to this stage in this conversation shows that they're hopefully going to get some nuggets out of this, but they are the sort of people who are trying to improve. There are some people listening to this who will listen to this. Maybe they enjoy it. Hopefully they do. Who will never think about it again once we've stopped. Yeah. And in a week's time, it'll be in the air, forgotten. Yeah. There'll be some people who hopefully there'll be some. I'm going to try my best to give some actionable takeaways, and those people that apply some of those that make sense to them will be the ones that improve off the back of that. So there's definitely a gradient of people. Right at the very bottom, you've got people who do not really care about sales. They see it as a 9 to 5. And then you right at the other end of the spectrum, you've got people who see it as a craft and treat it like an athlete would, preparing for the Olympics, so to speak. Yeah.
Do you know, I'm just gonna flag something here, and I think it's important to acknowledge we're not having a conversation about work-life balance blend at the moment, but of course that has to be part of the conversation at some stage if you're thinking about this sort of stuff. And I think there's a line and a balance to everything. To be clear, what we're not saying is all you should do in your personal time is think about sales and consume content, but there needs to be a level of consumption and desire to learn and move forward that comes naturally for you to be great at anything. 100%. And of course, to want to do that, you've got to be passionate about it, which is the point here, that don't be in something you don't enjoy and you're not passionate about it.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah, it's not. I don't do it because it makes me better, although that's one of the outcomes. I do it because I enjoy it and I'm genuinely passionate about it. If you'd have spoken to me 10 years ago, I wouldn't be saying any of this stuff. 10 years ago, I was not that type of person. I had quite a closed mindset, and whatever the reason for the shift, it's in the last sort of 6, 7, 8 years, I've had a much more open growth mindset, and as a result, much more confidence. Confidence has come from repetition, come from that passion. So it's not something that you just do. You can't motivate yourself to do that. It's a bit of discipline up front, and then it either clicks or it doesn't.
So how much does an organization's learning culture have an impact on the individual's desire to go and do that in their own time, do you think?
That's a very good question. So at MindTickle, clearly we're a sales readiness organization. We are very passionate about self-improvement. We're passionate about outcomes. So not just sitting there, certainly just doing training for training's sake, or certainly not using LMSs to click through SCORM files that someone who's never seen a salesperson in their life has put together. We're not about that. We're all about self-improvement and the power of coaching to actually help the individual. So as we said at the start, this is what the individual can do on top of what's being provided. But if you're creating a culture where there's lots of natural coaching, and by coaching, I don't mean deal reviews and forecast calls, which is what 80% of coaching is. I'm talking about real situational coaching, questioning, self-discovery, but even just giving feedback. So we've got in our platform, Call AI, conversation intelligence. Most managers are not who have that technology are not coaching on a consistent basis. As a result of that, the individuals are not necessarily getting the benefit of coaching, so that doesn't then instill that the results. So the results of coaching means that individual gets better if they apply it. They see that then creates that culture of self-improvement, because that person's thinking, if I've just listened to that 1 or 2 minutes of feedback and I've already got better there, what else could I do if I go and read this, listen to this podcast, go and listen to Chris Voss talking about negotiation, or whatever it is, and then all these things start to piece together. So I think the company and the culture is critical, but even in a company where it's not like that, the right individuals can thrive and very quickly get out.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair, because I'd imagine if you are investing in people's development internally, and you're giving them time within the work week to learn and to move forward and to progress, they're more likely to see the benefits of that and want to do more of that. And you'd think that was logical, and equally the opposite would be true, that an organization that doesn't invest in their people probably gets pushback, subconscious pushback from good people who say, well, if you're not going to invest in me, why should I do this outside of work? And they either don't do it and stagnate, or they leave, as you've rightly said.
Absolutely.
It's probably more likely with good people.
Yeah, good people won't stay in the right culture for long anyway. And we all know the types of companies in the UK or the US that are doing this right. There's companies like Outreach. Tom Castley's got a coaching culture. We've got a coaching culture here, and obviously part of the MindTickle organization. There are companies that are genuine about this, regardless what they're selling. And there are companies who are the opposite of that. And a lot of their employees who've been there a long time tend to be the ones that are not improving. They might be earning loads of money. Some of them are almost certainly earning lots more than me. However, they are not improving, not getting better, and they're not genuinely passionate about what they're doing. So on a Friday, they might be dreading Monday morning. Versus really having that zest for it. So I think culture is critical. I mean, obviously, I know from your perspective, culture is one of the things that you as an individual at Air are renowned for. When you're hiring people and you're looking for that culture, what do you see with the people that don't get hired by you versus those that do? What do you see around that in terms of that hunger for joining a company with the right culture?
Yeah, it's interesting because people, so there's two things I would say. One is we always expose people to the culture. So I'll never forget, going back a few years in my career, I was once offered a job as a sales director for a company who offered me the job before they'd said yes, and they hadn't said yes, I'd asked the question, to me meeting the team and going in the office, and I said, look, I'm not prepared to unless I've done these things.
Absolutely.
And they pushed back on it, actually, and I thought, well, that tells me everything I need to know. So ever since then, I've always said nobody joins the organization without meeting the organization. Right. So we open the doors, they come in as part of that interview process and meet people. Maybe they listen to sales calls being made, maybe we go for a coffee or a beer with the leadership team, whatever. There's always some kind of break the barriers down conversation. And I think that the right people for us are almost always the people who ask for that, who want that. And I think that tells you everything you know. When you ask at the end of the question about any more questions, and by the way, in my interviews, I always turn them the other way around. They start first, their questions first, I come later, because I think that tells me very quickly how they think through, have they applied themselves, or they're just here for the ride, as you said before.
Absolutely.
But it also means they set the theme for the discussion. But whenever you do that, or ask questions, or offer them to ask questions at the end, culture comes up, and they're the right people for us. Where it's not mentioned about people, they just say, oh, people are really important to me. And there's a really good test for this, Anthony, and I love this. So somebody will say to you, what's important to you in a role? And they'll say, oh, people, the people I work with. Cool. Get to the end of the interview and I say, okay, cool. So if I offered you the job right now, would you accept it? And they go, yes. Well, you haven't met the people that you're going to be working with yet. And I think you can tell the difference between lip service and somebody who really passionately wants to work with people that they fit around.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that it's something that in our process internally, I essentially, because you would have to rewrite a job description for a US versus a UK hire anyway, because of just the cultural differences and the role differences. But I started to change it from a cultural perspective, and then I thought, actually, why don't I forget doing this, and why don't I just start again? And I thought, what am I looking for? So I removed the MBA. Nothing against MBAs, but that's not the number one criteria. If it's going to be on there, it will be on there towards the end. Not actually on there on mine, because not because I don't looking to attract them, but it's not a criteria that you have to meet to get a job here. But what I was looking for are the traits of an individual that we're talking about earlier. So creativity, see sales as a craft, and can demonstrate what that actually means, because everyone can say it, but what does that actually mean? What are you actually doing? Creative curiosity is a massively critical one for me. Curiosity is the easiest thing to test for, because having an interview, how many questions do you get throughout? And if you're not getting enough and you say any questions and they go, oh no thanks, you covered they try and oh yeah, really,
I hate that phrase.
You did a great job, Owen. You did a great job. You've covered everything I was going to ask. So no, I don't have any questions. That's a warning sign to me that if they've not asked a lot of questions, it's not been a natural conversation before, and they have nothing to ask at the end. To me, that's
everything you need to know.
That person's not curious. And to your point, they're playing lip service. The challenge we have as hiring managers is salespeople, even mediocre or even poor salespeople, can sell themselves. So it's a big challenge there. So when I'm looking for, that's why I'm looking for, I am interested in where they've been. I am interested in their stories about success. And I'm interested in getting into the detail of that, because that's where you start to find out if there's a repeatable process, at least. But for me, I think it's that curiosity, questioning, grit. You can't test for grit, but it's hard to test for grit. You can hear stories about it, but you get an idea of someone's drive from talking to them. I think you talking to me now, me talking to you, we will know if the other has a drive and a genuine passion. You can't fake it for that long. You can fake it for a little bit, but you can't fake it that long.
First 15-20 minutes of an interview, and then it starts to drop, doesn't it? It's like the fatigue kicks in. let's just touch on some, you said earlier, like, hopefully people get some tangible takeaways. So if you are an AE now or an SDR, and you're looking for where should I be going to consume content, because I think one of the pitfalls of all this is that yes, it's already available, but there's also so much, and there's so many opinions. Where would you point people towards now?
So now everyone's different. So not everyone wants. I read quite a lot. I read because it switches my brain off at night. Otherwise, I don't. So I do a lot of reading. For self-improvement, if you like, but actual improvement. So I read a lot of business books, sales books. And I take a lot away from that. So some people would think, yeah, that sounds great. Other people would think, they're just not readers. So if they're not like that, obviously there's services like Audible. Maybe they'll sponsor the show if I give them a little shout out. But there's things like Audible and stuff like that where people can listen to that. We've got podcasts. And again, it's about following the quality. I will give another one a shout out, actually. That 30 Minutes to President's Club, I really like. It's done by BDRs, SDRs. It's a 20 to 30 minute format, and it's very actionable. So whether you're a reader and you want to read things like Gap Selling, you want to read Chris Voss's book, you want to read David Premier's book, Sell the Way You Buy. Those are the three that I would recommend, by the way. But there's loads of books that are good. Question-based selling is a more, what's the word? Less accessible read. It's not particularly difficult, but it's not as easy to consume as Gap Selling, for example. But question-based selling is very good. So there's lots of things that you can do. Just reading those 4 books or listening to those 4 books or going to a couple of podcasts would automatically make you better if you take stuff away and apply it. And then that will then start leading you to different things, because if you're listening to one podcast like 30 Minutes to President's Club, they get guests who are guess what, promoting their own podcast, and you'll see if you like them, and it becomes an ongoing cycle. So there's a lot of that. LinkedIn, there's a lot of people worth looking at, following for different reasons. Daniel Disney. I'm naming all these people so I can link them later. Then hopefully I'll borrow some of their clout and they'll like this. But but genuinely, Daniel Disney, there are lots of people out there who talk about LinkedIn. Most of them either talk about the stuff that everyone knows, or you can find out with a 10-minute LinkedIn learning video. But Daniel Disney is all about actionable takeaways. So my actionable takeaways is more than me, something I'm necessarily going to say myself on this call. It's more about going and looking at doing things like this, checking out one or two of these things, because that will then start the drive for that learning, and you'll get results from that. So if you so that to me is, if you're a BDR, SDR, there's also loads of communities now. I actually can't remember. Do you know many SDR, BDR communities? There's one from Sarah Brazier.
There's there's the SDR League popping up, but what's it called? SDR Nation. I think that's one. Yeah.
I mean, 10 years ago, if we'd have been sat having this conversation, it wouldn't have been via Teams. It would have been on the phone. We would not be able to come up with podcasts. We wouldn't have been able to come up with books, possibly, but that self-publishing has made books a lot more accessible, a lot easier. There was not, I think we're living in an age where, yes, you can get bombarded and you can waste a lot of time, but equally, if you're being selective and following recommendations, it's so easy now to get better because there's so much more. There's lots of communities. There's obviously Rev Genius, there's Revenue Collective, which is obviously for leaders, revenue leaders, also people that aspire to be revenue leaders. There are so many things that you can do now. And back to the start of this, what are you going to do yourself? Because I've just named about, 10 things that you can do. If you come away having got to this part of the call and don't do any of that, you probably shouldn't have bothered wasting your time.
That was a good point to stop about 2 minutes
in. you have to do something. So to me, there's loads of things. I've got loads of podcasts and loads of things because my dog enjoys a few walks a day. So do you have a couple of go-to podcasts?
So not so much podcasts, more events. So I like more of the the sort of live event type stuff. So things like Sales Confidence that we take part in, I think great because in an hour I can listen to 7 different people with 7 different opinions on 7 different topics, for example. Or those sorts of people that are in it, doing it in real life and are prepared to share their learnings on a webinar and answer questions. So I like to engage in and around that because much like the person you gave an example about, I'm not a great reader, mainly because I don't have much time outside of work with 3 young kids. So if I'm learning, I want to be learning in an engaging two-way street, and that works really well for me. So I'd encourage people to go and do that if they don't have that time for sitting still with a book for long periods of time, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Please don't picture me sitting in my pipe and slippers reading in the corner. It's more.
It's too late for that. It's too late for that. Sorry.
I was going to say, James Ski is going to be lighting my phone up because I mentioned all of this stuff and I didn't mention Sales Confidence.
It's all right. We dropped him.
I'm glad you did. He'll be going berserk when I started mentioning all those others and not the one that we are connected with.
You're right. I think there's also people like Morgan Freeman, John Barrows, those sorts of guys that are putting content out, 2-3 minute videos, snippets you can watch on the run, on your phone, off you go. Those sorts of things. I really love it. People at Refract doing the same sort of stuff.
Yes.
That really easily consumable 2 to 5 minute. I've learned something. I've taken 2 or 3 nuggets away, and I've heard it 2 or 3 times now, and I can do something with it. That works really well for me.
I definitely agree. And Josh Braun's another one who's really good. So he's very again, loads of actionable takeaways. So my takeaways again, I was listening to someone else for some takeaways. So I'm outsourcing my takeaways on here, but they are really good. Josh Braun, good content, actionable, and to your point, and back to sort of the reason that MindTickle exists, bite size. You don't need an hour and a half. No. You want 2-3 minutes. You're going to be cutting this down into sections as well.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be actionable or interesting things, hopefully, that you can find out of what I've said today, to give 1 or 2 minute snippets so that somebody can then think, is that 1 minute interesting enough for me to dive deeper?
Yeah.
No one's diving deeper if your snippet is an hour and a half long. No one's interested. So it's just a case of almost like the advert to then dive deeper into that individual or company. And if you're an AE or BDR, there's nothing stopping you doing this yourself on LinkedIn. Just please don't like your company's page and think that is social selling. Please don't share your company's page or post. No one cares about what your company is doing. They'll care about you as an individual and not your products, but what you fundamentally believe in. I've managed to get one takeaway. One actionable takeaway from me is don't do that. Make sure you're posting stuff that is interesting to you, interesting to your buyer, but not liking your company's page or sharing a company's post.
Yeah.
Your own stuff in a short way.
Love it. I heard you say at an event a little while ago, and I've just gone back to my notepad where I wrote down something you said at a sales confidence event in one of your 7-minute talks, which is things being short, sharp, and tied to key initiatives and outcome obsessed. And I think that feeds really nicely back into that point around the content. I think there's one other thing that's worth mentioning before we wrap up, which is around the fact that by consuming content that isn't your own, isn't your organization's, you bring another level of value to your organization, to the right organization who's open to improving and learning and taking on different opinions. So you're bringing in things that other people can benefit from across the organization. This isn't just about your journey then, it's about how you impact a wider organization. I think there's one major benefit there that people don't think about when they're thinking about, should I go and invest this time? That this makes you the go-to person, the person that's bringing the new ideas, that's challenging the way that we do things and helping the organization push forwards. And that multiplies your value across that organization.
Yeah, nail on the head there. And that's one of the reasons I work for Replayz.com on the side, not only because if I don't, I'll be sitting there in my slippers reading a book, so I need something to do. But I genuinely take a lot out of that. I do it because I get to meet interesting people. I mentioned Jake Gebrold at Clue several times, but I get to meet interesting AEs, but I also get exposed to different people. I get exposed to different solutions, different approaches. I'm improving my coaching, and then bringing the company I work for, MindTickle, is very receptive and open to some of those things. So my company benefits from the fact that I'm taking content and an approach from Replayz, just absorbing it. So exactly to exemplify that point, it's get out there, and if your company do have that right culture, as you said, where they are open to new things, and you are somebody who's investing in yourself and your company's investing in you, then you've found that sweet spot.
Love that. Well, look, Anthony, I think we've given people some good takeaways today. I think I might have said Morgan Freeman rather than Morgan Ingram. I'm thinking about it.
I actually
did you notice that?
I did. Then I thought I was trying to think of a joke and I couldn't think of one, and then it went.
About 2 minutes later, I replayed it in my head and I went, did I say Morgan Freeman? I think I did.
I was thinking about a joke and I couldn't think of one, but it's Morgan Ingram, isn't it?
Morgan Ingram, yeah. Two great guys nonetheless, but for very, very different reasons with the first name. But there you go. But yeah, Morgan Ingram, just to clear up, and we'll tag him in this so you can follow his content and he can get some extra follows out for me calling him Morgan Freeman. Anyway, look, Anthony, brilliant discussion. I really enjoyed it because I think we can't emphasize this enough with people that, you know, your own development is more important than how you're doing your job now. It's how you're doing your career for years come forward.
100%.
And it's very, very important. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, talk to you, where do you hang out? What's the best channels to make contact with you?
I think the easiest one for me now is LinkedIn. So Anthony Parker, just type in Anthony Parker MindTickle or Anthony Parker Replayz with a Z. Or if you do that, the URL, it's LinkedIn/readiness. So LinkedIn's definitely the best way to get hold of me. If anyone wants to connect, anyone has any questions, anyone's interested in anything that I've covered here, more than happy to continue the conversation. And enjoyed the session, Owen.
Thank you. Yeah, really enjoyed talking to you as always. Good to catch up. See you again soon. Thank you ever so much.
Cheers, Owen.
Cheers.